Good afternoon. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. Taking a different road today, we're going to look actually at the first thoughts on winter. Yes, we are in the middle of summer, but it is that time of the year when I start to look at various aspects globally that may be something to pay attention to as we go down the road. So if you're tired of the heat, you're tired of the all the things that are associated with summer, today's video is going to cool you down, so to speak, as we have some interesting things to look at. First and foremost, La Nina. It looks as if NOAA is increasing the possibility of the return of a weak La Nina as we head towards the autumn season here. So this is one aspect that I'm looking at, is the ENSO. Now, if you look at this graphic here, let's blow this up. You can see here there's a few. Now, this is purely for fun, folks, so I don't want you jumping on board in the comments and turning around and saying, you know, it's impossible to say so far out with regards to winter season. This isn't about hyping any cold agenda or anything like that, but certainly a few aspects that are reasonably straightforward at the moment, I think, is going to continue into the winter season. So a little bit of a question mark with regards to La Nina, but it looks as if NOAA is increasing the percentage chance of a La Nina developing as we head. Now, you notice here, this is June, July, and August. Right here, very strong neutral signal, close to 90%, in fact, for a neutral ENSO through the summer season. As we see into the June, July, and August, and then August, September, October, you can see here that neutral percentage is dropping quite considerably from nearly 90% to less than 60%. And then as we move towards, say, September, October, November, where you can see here that the percentage has actually dropped below 50%. So while we see the neutral percentage dropping, we're seeing the increase in terms of a La Nina returning. And if you look at the NMME model here, you can see we've got this kind of reflection of what something resembling La Nina, more so than a neutral or an El Nino, I must say. But you can see here as we play through, this is for July into August, into September. You notice here that we're starting to cool these waters here around Nino region 3.4. So these waters cooling down is coinciding with what NOAA's thinking, and then that even increases further as we move into the autumn season, deeper into the autumn season anyway. The crucial aspect in terms of a winter point of view is, where does that cool water, if it develops, because we don't know yet, but if it develops, and there's a fairly decent chance it will, reform, where will it position itself? Closer to South America, in the Central Pacific, or a bit of both? That's going to be one aspect to take into consideration. So La Nina is one aspect that has to be taken into consideration. One thing I want to point out is we never were in an official La Nina last time around. You have to go back to the beginning of 2023, the last time we had the La Nina threshold met. 23, 24, and even the first half of 25, you've either got a El Nino or neutral conditions over the last 18 to 24 months or so. That may be one of the aspects that has been driving this cold globe, or warm globe, should I say. We've been increasing the temperature very abruptly, 23 into 24, and the question mark would be, with a reasonably strong El Nino, looks as if we've maybe seen the response on a global scale, both in the SSTs as well as the atmosphere and the land areas as well. So that is one thing. I want to move on then to the East QBO. We've got an easterly QBO now developed. It looks as if it's made the most abrupt flip. This is according to our very own Richard Trott. An abrupt flip from a westerly QBO, which tends to enhance the jet stream within the mid latitudes, the high latitudes, and it strengthens the jet stream through the northern hemisphere when you've got a firmly westerly QBO. What is a QBO and what is a westerly QBO? Westerly winds within the stratospheric level within the equator. So winds blowing either west to east within the stratosphere over the equator is what the QBO, or quasi-biennial oscillation, is. We've went from strong westerly to a firm easterly, and that is likely to continue into the upcoming boreal winter 25-26. The combination, and this is just a very brief overview here, a combination of both La Nina and an easterly QBO could support colder and blocking within the mid to high latitude pattern as we move, particularly into the first half of winter. So a QBO and a La Nina quasi-binary oscillation. This is an AI overview here, folks. So a very, very quick and dirty look at this is the cycle of winds within the stratosphere over the equator, which switches direction from east to west roughly every 28 months. La Nina is a climate pattern characterized by cool waters, cooler than average waters within the sea surfaces of the central and east tropical Pacific. These two phenomena can interact and influence weather patterns, particularly during the winter season here. I'd like to say, very important, if these waters do cool, where the cool is going to be very important. But this could impact the polar vortex when it develops during the month of September, October, November. La Nina tends to strengthen the polar vortex, a swirling mass of cold air within the Arctic. However, the QBO can modify this effect. In a La Nina year, if the QBO is easterly, the polar vortex tends to weaken and susceptible to disruptions. So we could see an increase in things such as a polar vortex weakening, collapse, reversal. The increase is there. The increase in chance is there when you've got the combination of a cold enso and an easterly QBO. The influence of the jet, the QBO, also affects the jet stream, band of strong winds high in the atmosphere that influences weather patterns. East QBO during a La Nina can lead to a weaker jet stream because easterly QBO winds tend to cause frictional effects as you progress within the upper levels of the troposphere and stratosphere further north when you've got an easterly wind. When you've got those winds blowing out of the west within the stratosphere over the equator, tends to be the opposite. It tends to power up the strength of the jet stream, also powers up the polar vortex strength as well. So it's going to be interesting to see this combination of the potential of La Nina. Pretty confident that we're going to have this East QBO winter and the possibility of a weak La Nina here as we move towards the upcoming winter season here. Another aspect to take into consideration is the AAO, or the Antarctic Oscillation. We look at, obviously, every winter at the Arctic Oscillation. When it's firmly positive, you've got all the cold air bundled up over the Arctic region, you've got a stronger than average polar vortex, etc. When you've got the exact same thing over Antarctica, over the South Pole during the winter season down in the Southern Hemisphere. And that's exactly what we have at the moment. We're in the middle of winter down in the Southern Hemisphere. We've seen cold outbreaks with a few negative AOs. So just remember, AO negative during our winter season tends to release cold into the middle latitudes. It's the exact same thing, only the opposite over the Southern Hemisphere. So the AO is expected to go deeply negative. Therefore, you would expect to see some somewhat colder air into South America, Australia, New Zealand, and into South Africa. When you've got a very strong AAO, you tend to bundle the cold, you tend to strengthen the polar vortex over Antarctica, and you've got bitterly cold conditions over the continent of Antarctica. So the point I'm trying to make with this is sometimes there is a loose connection between a negative AAO during their winter season with perhaps a reflection to a weaker polar vortex and a increased likelihood of a negative Arctic Oscillation 6 months or so down the road here, 6 to 7 months down the road. Could we see a reflection between this negative AAO now in July with a negative AO as we head towards the winter season? So these are three factors that may play into some interesting things. Another interesting factor is the multiple eruptions, but very powerful eruption of Laki-Laki in Indonesia. This is an equatorial volcanic eruption that spewed ash and materials all the way up to 11 miles above the surface. In fact, it reached the stratosphere. The question mark would be, could this? This is speculation, but could this have some form of influence in increasing high latitude blocking in combination with La Nina, combination with an East QBO into the upcoming winter season here? So that's another factor that we are paying close attention to. I want to also finish off by showing you here the CFSV2 for the month of November. It's indicating a fairly blocked up negative AO and NAO pattern, North Atlantic Oscillation. We've got the positives here over the North Atlantic extending into Greenland and the Arctic region. We've got this neutral heights over Europe. That supports somewhat of a trough, perhaps over Western Europe, when you've got this blocking pattern here, this highly amplified pattern here, when you've got a lot of positive heights over the pole, over Greenland, over the North Atlantic, tends to lead to troughiness. There's one over Eastern North America. There's likely to be one somewhere over Western areas of Europe. Moving forward then into the month of December, you can still see the positives over the top, representative of a weaker polar vortex. And then into January, quite interesting. Again, this is all just for fun. Let's not get ourselves too carried away here. But the January 2026 strong block, North Atlantic, Greenland, and into the Arctic, likely to be a trough over Western areas of Europe here. So some interesting food for thought, at least, as we head towards the back half of this summer season. More on the overall summer pattern in the next couple of days here. We could be looking at a bit of a change as we head into the second half of July. MJO is progressing eastwards over the Pacific. What influence does that have further down the road? We'll look at that in a little bit more detail over the next couple of days here. So stay tuned for that. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. I hope you're enjoying what you're seeing here on the channel. Thanks for everybody's support, and I'll see you tomorrow with more. Bye for now.